Welcome to Miss Win Checking In, the space where creativity meets healing. Here, we explore the path of mindful expression through the lens of writing, wellness, and soulful storytelling. Take a moment to pause and ask yourself, how are you feeling right now? If you're watching this on YouTube, drop an emoji in the comments to represent how you're feeling. And then let's check in at the end. Let's take a deep breath, tune in, and prepare to create from within. Hey, it's Miss Win checking in, and we're back for another meaningful episode. Today, I am here with Miss Josi Dumont, leadership and mindset coach. Today, we are talking about strategies for emotional healing. Welcome, Josie, and thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me and for this nice little welcome. I wanted to say warm up, but I'm like, this is not a warm up. This is a welcome. Thanks so much for having me. So yeah, as you said, I'm a mindset and leadership coach. Right now, going through the transition actually to change my title to performance coach
Hmm.
because I want to focus more on sustainable productivity as well in my work because most of my clients they struggle with imposter syndrome, burnout, and self-doubt, and I felt performance might be the better description.
Wow. Why performance? Why would that be a better description?
Because we all are looking to literally be our best and give our best, right? In the
Mm,
work we do. And performance for me was a better description because leadership, well, not always, but often was quite confusing for my clients because they were like, oh, so you're just working with leaders. And I'm like, well, you are a leader in your life anyway. It's not just about your
mm,
career. You are a leader in your life. So if you take leadership in your life, that's when you step into leadership. And you basically take control and you take ownership and responsibility over where you want to go. But that was always like so long-winded to explain. So I was like, let's focus on performance because it just
mm.
clarifies a little bit more. Okay, we're here to really work on your mindset, on your self-trust, to shift that self-doubt into self-trust, and to also get into the nitty-gritty of imposter syndrome as well. So it worked a little bit better this way recently. It's just like a recent crystallization that I have
Mm.
been noticing. That's why it's a very, very recent, literally this week shift.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay. So then I want to know your thoughts then on emotional healing and how that relates to what you're doing.
I feel like it's a core piece in the work of coaching and in general, because emotional healing, well, obviously coaching is not necessarily therapy, so I will not
Mm,
go into like the past with a client to understand their traumas or like really go into why this happened, how this impacted them. I can't make any diagnosis in terms of like maybe they have some post-traumatic disease or whatever it is. So coaching doesn't do that. Coaching does touch on the past in a sense of just trying to get an understanding, like a rough understanding of where maybe current behaviors are coming from.
mm,
So that also includes emotional healing, meaning that if we right now maybe struggle with expressing ourselves or speaking up or really being in the spotlight or showing ourselves, that might require some emotional healing that stems from the past where we have been hurt. And then, in order to feel safe again, we created like a self-sabotaging kind of like behavior or habit that kept us in this comfort zone. And we kept
mm.
that throughout growing up. So we stuck with that. So that's kind of like how emotional healing transpires also into the coaching work. Plus, we then, with this new self-awareness, which is like a key piece. And I feel like I'm a broken record with this because I always say that, but self-awareness is the first step. Like you can't go without. The more you understand yourself, the better you can then make different choices for your life and the goals and where you want to be.
Yeah, no, that's big. I want to say, even for myself, something that I've learned is that self-sabotaging. And I would say, well, I was okay with it. I was aware that I was doing it, but I was also okay that sometimes, well, I'm self-sabotaging because this opportunity or this moment or experience felt unsafe. So let
Exactly.
me ruin my chances of going through with it because I'm so scared. And there was a story I shared in another episode where I had this amazing opportunity to illustrate a book with an author. I'm an author publisher. And sometimes I get to be a little bit creative with the work that I do. And I said, man, it was so cool. The author loved the one drawing that I did, but I freaked out and fumbled and just, and never went back. And I don't know if I will go back, but I just was scared. But yeah, emotional healing, I can see now after you said it, like, yeah, if, dealing with those emotions, fear, which now I'm in a place where I've learned, and I would love your opinion on this as well, where fear really is just guiding you to areas where you can be stronger, right? And so it was like, oh man, if you can deal with those feelings. Like, why are you afraid of this? And like really explore those feelings, really explore fear itself and figure out what it is. Maybe you can move past that. What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely. No, I agree. Most of the time, like when we maybe have a new goal or we face a new challenge, the first thing we obviously experience is fear because we're
Mm,
like, oh, wow, like this is something new coming my way. I've never dealt with this before. It's completely uncertain. And our natural body response would be to feel fear because it's like, this is new. I don't know this. This is outside my comfort zone because we literally don't know what might be happening to us. So, yeah, fear is like a big one to overcome.
mhm,
But in the same time, I also always say there are like almost kind of like two types of fear because there's this one fear that pushes you outside your comfort zone that promotes growth. And sometimes maybe your fear actually is quite valid because maybe this actually is something that might be life-threatening or that could actually be something happening to you that is like a kind of like a worst case scenario. But it's important in that moment to be able to differentiate between the two and be able to tell if this fear that we're experiencing right now is truly valid. And most of the time, because in the times we live in right now, it's not, because there will not be like a tiger jumping out of the bush next
mhm,
minute to try and eat us. That would be a valid fear. Like that is like life or death fear, right?
mhm,
But if it's more about should I really maybe leave this career to start a new one because I really feel passionate about this other role, there, there's nothing majorly seriously that could happen to you. Like in the worst case, you might be searching for a new job for a little bit longer. But it's the key to just being able to differentiate that and then kind of like debunk that a little bit by doing this.
mm. I like that. I like that. So, have you ever just been in a situation where you have had to deal with your own emotions, like in healing from your own emotional situation going on? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, there's so many. But the most recent one would be the year of 2021, which was just a complete whirlwind for me.
Mm,
At that time, I was in a long-term relationship, about to marry my now ex-husband.
mm,
And at the same time, I also just went through burnout because I was leading a huge project. And even though it all worked out, it was too much work on my end and it just burned me out completely. So I was facing burnout, also the toxic relationship. And then at the same time, we also had some restructurings going on at work. And I got asked the question, Joyce, do you want to stay or leave? So there were like loads of like life decisions thrown at me. And then it came to the wedding day. And that was actually kind of like the day where everything almost like crashed. But on the day itself, I couldn't show it because sometimes, and that's also something that comes up in emotional healing, is if you have been masking and dissociating so much and it's your natural behavior, even when you have a panic attack, no one will know because
mm,
you look fine from the outside, but on the
mhm,
inside you might just be like running loose, like this meme that of that little dog that sits in the burning house and it's like it's fine, but it's not fine, right? So that's kind of like how I felt on that day. But at the same time, like even though I said yes to like being married, at the same time I felt like, oh, I should have said no. Like, why did no one else say no? And it made me really realize that I have to be my own hero in that story and um, basically step up for myself and change things. But it still took me like 3 weeks, and actually for my now ex-husband to ask, like, Josie, you have been so depressed lately. What's been going on? And I was like, I don't think we should be married. And then just saying that, voicing that, communicating that
Mm,
really made like kind of like hell break loose in form of like emotions, but also relief because I was like, whoa, now finally everything is
mm,
like up to me again. I don't just have to play the game. I don't just have to mask or dissociate and just be like this puppet in this life I thought I created and I love, but I didn't. But this
mm,
also meant like a huge emotional turmoil because for 12 years I have been obviously living and working towards this goal of having a house, having a husband, living there with your cats, having a great job, a great finance career, and all of a sudden it's all gone. So how do you deal with that emotionally, right? So that was just pure chaos at first,
mm,
which is also, it's totally fine if it's total chaos at first. Like we are here to experience life in its fullest. That means sometimes at the highest peaks of life that life can offer, but also in
mm.
the lowest lows. And that clearly was for me one of my lowest lows. And navigating that was just taking one day after the other and being really, really honest with myself. And specifically coaching, like not me training as a coach, but me being coached, helped
Mm.
me just navigate the space and create more of a sense of, again, self-awareness to really know myself and get to know myself in terms of what I want in life, what do I truly, truly want, and what truly makes me happy. Then from there on, I was able to work through it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. I think you mentioned some key points just about why you would need emotional healing, right? A lot of times it can be just everyday life things, relationships,
Hmm.
work, your career, your even yourself, dealing with your own self-identity and who you are as a person. These are some of the things that, if we're not in this space, you and I are in this space, but if you're someone in the audience and you're thinking, well, I'm not really in those spaces, you might not be aware of those things. Um, but I like what you said, and I haven't heard this before, so I'm glad you mentioned it, just the coaching aspect of it. Coaching, getting some a mentor, getting one-on-one time with someone who has gone through it and can help you also get through these different life experiences that we go through. That's really important. I've talked about, getting in community, and that can be scary. I don't want to invalidate anybody who's like, oh, I don't want to just hop right into a group of people, like a support
Yeah.
group or something, and tell them all my business. Like, and that's not for me. I will still deal with this thing in isolation, but maybe getting with a coach one-on-one is a good strategy to get through some emotional healing. Yeah. Okay. But what about some daily practices and routines to maybe maintain just that emotional balance?
That is a great question because it really is up to what we do daily, actually, that in the long term makes the biggest difference. So
Mm-hmm.
here I have a couple tips from what I have done, and one being is to just first understand your emotions better. So get a better feeling of how you're actually feeling. And a very easy, simple way of how I've been doing it, and also that kind of like helped me to actually figure out that my past relationship back then wasn't as great, was that I just tracked my emotions. So I had like a
Mm.
little monthly tracker in my iPad that I used as a journal. And every single day I would color like a little emoji either in red when I was feeling super down, or orange when I was like, meh, it's fine, or green when I was like, no, it was a great day and I'm super happy. And just by doing that, after a while, when I like looked back, I could see like some patterns and I could see, so hey, the majority of the time, I actually am in the red zone, so I don't feel happy at all. And
Mm.
most of the time, I also paired it with journaling. So that allowed me to just, and that's another daily practice you can do, that
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to look back a little bit and see like what actually has been going on. So it's a great reflective exercise. At the same time, journaling is also a great way to get it out of the system. So that would be my
Hmm.
other daily practice. And by getting it out of the system, I don't just mean like journaling, but also get it out of your body. Like
Hmm.
movement is
Movement,
great,
yeah.
specifically when you do it outside. Nature can be super, super healing. So going for a walk, just clearing your head, getting fresh air, or breathing exercises, meditation, practicing gratitude, all of these things are, you don't have to do them all. I'm not saying that, but
Hmm.
like picking one or two that really sticks with you, that lands with you, where you're like, yes, I can get behind this on a daily practice for like 5, 10 minutes every day.
Hmm.
Amazing, do that. And even though you might not think so, hey, what does exercise to do with like emotional healing? But it truly helps you getting again out of your mind, out of this overthinking mode, out of this part of your body here,
Yeah.
and back into your full body and to just experience your body again on a different level. And it can really just be also like a great, not ventilation system, but more like just to vent, to get this like stuck
Hmm.
energy out. Because very often we carry maybe even heavy emotions that have been there for longer. Or if it's something that made you really angry in the moment, it's a great way to release that anger too. So journaling, tracking your emotions, gratitude practice is a good one because it just shifts your perspective, and movement definitely are some of my top recommendations.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. One of the things that I've been doing more recently is just that movement part, especially, at work. I love my job, but I also, like I said, I'm an author publisher, and so by day I'm an employee, by night I'm an employer kind of thing is how I look at myself. And it's like, man, sometimes I'll get something from a client on my phone, and I'm like, okay, let me get up and take a walk. Even
Yeah.
if it's just walk around the office, let me go get something to drink, go do something to like kind of shake this off, or I'll physically like, just
Yeah, just
yeah,
shaking.
just shaking it off, and I'll like visualize myself just shake off that yucky energy or whatever it
Mm,
is that I'm feeling. And especially because sometimes when we're in places where we have to be there, we're committed, we're obligated, or, we're family or we're at work and something pops up and it is emotionally charging,
mm,
you can't just leave. You can't just leave the place. So finding those things that you can do. Now, I don't have time to sit there and journal at work. I'm supposed to be productive working on my project. So I'm like, I can just shake it off or get up, walk around the office, whatever, go
mm,
outside, walk the parking lot. That's what I tend to do. I have 2 times a day where I walk the parking lot just to exercise, but also to shake off any emotions from the day, from things coworkers might have said that maybe got under my skin or whatever. And just doing that has been helpful. And these little things you might not realize it at first because that was something that I didn't even realize like, oh, this is actually helpful. I can go
mm,
home, and by the time I get home, it's like, okay, I've already dealt with these things. Um, so I don't have to continue carrying it. But at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm home now. I can deal with this client. I can respond to the message, things like that, instead of overthinking it. Because when you don't, so we can talk about that. When you don't have a sort of daily practice or routine, the opposite, what it looks like, just it doesn't feel good. Do you mind like exploring that a little bit and expounding on that?
yeah, of course. I mean, if you don't have like those possibilities, opportunities to vent or let it out, what it does is it's eating you up from inside. That's how I felt. Like if it
Mm-hmm.
just gets too much, like because you're bottling all the emotions up, right? And I see that actually quite often with clients who have difficulties expressing their emotions. And there was one in particular, she was like, I can't cry, I can't like let these stronger emotions get to me. And she was bottling all of them up, like even strong feelings of love or happiness. Like even though she enjoyed them, at the same time she was like, oh, but not too much. So there was always like a little damper, and she would always like push them down and push them down. And obviously harder emotions too. And then we just literally started exploring just to let them out a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But what it caused her up until that point before we worked together was that sometimes she would just explode.
Mm,
So, and then just
mhm.
everything would come out and everything would come to the surface, and it was just overwhelming. So, by not being able to like regulate your emotions or heal them or just literally experience them and let them be, because hang on, like they are part of the human experience. We need emotions. Like they are
Mhm.
also little helpers throughout the days. But if we don't acknowledge them and just bottle them up, then they can cause way worse things that we didn't even intend to just because we did not express them in the first place. That's kind
Yeah.
of like how I see it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so, but what about setting boundaries? How do you approach setting boundaries as a part of emotional healing?
So I always say, and that goes a little bit into boundaries with other people, but it can also
Mhm.
fit with challenges, situations, or yourself, is how you treat your boundaries, is how you teach others to treat you. And with boundaries, I always put at the forefront your own values, your own needs, your goals, your wants. And they directly feed into your well-being. They feed into how happy you are in life.
Mhm.
And so boundaries fit into the emotional healing realm in a sense of sometimes we need to take space. Sometimes we need to have distance from those things that put us down or that have a negative impact from us on us. Maybe that is other people, maybe that is certain situations, maybe there are certain triggers, or maybe it is if you get into self-sabotaging behaviors and you're like people pleasing all the time and saying yes to the party you don't want to go to, but you're actually feeling, oh, I really don't want to go, and you feel
Mhm.
miserable about being there. But at the same time, you're also like feeling bad because you're like, oh, but I can't say no, I can't leave earlier. So you're in an emotional turmoil, right? But by setting a
Mhm.
boundary, you could also just say, I'm not going to this one, but maybe I can meet with the person in a different setting where I feel a bit more comfortable. Or
Mhm.
maybe you had already other plans, but you want to kind of like put more emphasis on your own needs. That doesn't mean being selfish and not doing anything for others or with others. It just
Mhm.
means using those boundaries to protect your inner peace a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right on. Setting boundaries as yeah. Because I'm thinking when you said, "Oh, I don't want to be here." That's sometimes that is me. Absolutely.
Same.
Especially when it comes to family. I'm like, "Man, I
Mm,
feel obligated to show up for family. Every family thing, I feel obligated to be there." But sometimes it's like, hey, family, I love you, but not right now. And I think I shared a little bit about that before we even started. I'm working on Sundays, recording
mhm.
podcasts right now. And I had a family member say to me last weekend, like, oh, I heard you recording podcasts in the morning, you're working on Sundays. And I said, hell yeah. Like, this is just what I have to do. And they were like shocked. And I, just kind of walked away from them, not really giving them the opportunity to say more because to be honest, I don't really care, but I just knew that from the look on their face, um, whatever else they had to say wasn't going to be positive and supportive.
Mm.
And so in that moment, I walked away. Let me go take a stroll. Let me go get something to drink, shake off this energy because I didn't like it. And I didn't want to be judged. But I said, you know what? I was so proud of myself because I felt like I had set that emotional boundary. Will I continue to go to family events? We're working on that, absolutely. But if I have something else to do, I will not be canceling what I have to do to go to a family event. I, have been able to give myself that. And so, you know what? My goals are worthy of my time over my family events. I will see my family. I will get there when I get there. I'm okay with being late. And these are things that I used to be so anxious about. I used to be so anxious that, oh, they're going to be so pissed off if I show up
Yeah.
late, or they're going to be so mad if I don't even come. Let them, that Mel Robinson's new book, let them. I just had to, let them be mad. They'll be okay. I will see them again
Yeah.
next week. Like, let them feel their emotions as well. That was a boundary I had to give myself. Look, you can't control other people's emotions. Let them be mad. Let them, have whatever. They're going to say whatever, but I can continue to remain unbothered. I can shake off their energy that they're trying to impose on me. I'm okay with that. But that did take a lot of work. But it also, and I want to go back to the self-awareness part because for in order to make that change, in order to do something different, I had to be aware that I was in this loop of, girl,
Mm.
you are always going out of your way for people. You're always taking on other people's emotions. You're always putting, you not wanting to be the bad guy is like dimming your own emotions. And it just wasn't good. I was getting headaches, my chest was hurting, all of these different ailments I was experiencing. And when I had just kind of, and it was through journaling, when I had seen that, I was like, girl, you gotta stop. We gotta do something,
Yeah.
something else. And that was it. And I can say I feel a lot better from doing that. But self-awareness, what role does self-awareness play then in your strategies or our strategies for emotional healing?
I mean, as I said in the beginning, like self-awareness is the first step. It's literally the
Mhm.
key, and it is the one thing that you take away from coaching as well. So when working with clients, the one thing they all walk away with is self-awareness or a better understanding of themselves. They understand their triggers better, their patterns, emotional patterns, auto responses, habits, behaviors, and through understanding that, that's when you know what you can change and you have like a different perspective on things of what you could do maybe differently in order to get a different response, right?
Mhm.
And that means maybe just watching, as you just described, like what's going on inside your body when you're maybe triggered or you're not feeling as well. Like, do you have sweaty hands? Like, is your heartbeat
Mhm.
racing? Or are you maybe completely like retracting and you're like feeling like you just want to curl up in your bed like a burrito, not come out and just shut out the world? Like, what is kind of like your bodily response to those kind of things, but also what thoughts are popping up, like literally how are you talking to
Mhm.
yourself in your mind. Maybe if it is a situation at work where you maybe have to present something to a client at the same time in your head, you're like, will they like it? Is it actually good enough? Am I good
Mhm.
enough? Will they still pay me? Will they still like me? Or do I need to do something different? Oh, I could have done this better. Or I could do this
Mhm.
differently. So getting just aware of these kind of like thoughts and behaviors, that's also obviously self-awareness. And that's crucial in understanding where you are at or what you could do in terms of your emotional healing. And just to also kind of like share a little bit of like an example from my side, um, I did not do a big shift in terms of like my family settings, for example, until I was 25. So until I was 25, I was like, no, 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 I just have to like uphold this almost like image of the perfect daughter who does everything for like what they ask for and what and
Mhm.
just try have like a great relationship with the father, with the grandma and everything. But then when I turned 25, I was just like, I am so sick of faking it because every time
Mhm.
had to like force myself to do something they wanted, but I didn't want to. It just felt so yucky. It just
Mhm.
gave me the ick because I was like, this is not me. I'm not behaving like me. So this is also a very like kind of like an alarm bell almost. If you feel like this does not feel like me, this does not align with me, it doesn't align with my values, then this is a sign that okay, we gotta change something here. But you obviously gotta create that awareness of how you're feeling in that moment and then why you're feeling that, and then to make the decision. How I did on my 25th birthday, I was like, I gotta cut ties. So I cut ties completely to my father, for example, and also restricted access from like other family members to me as well. And I was like, I don't want these people in my life anymore. I love them, respect them, I forgive them for anything that happened. But at the same
Mhm.
time, I had to put up this boundary here as well for this
Mhm.
emotional healing that I needed to focus on my life and to be happy myself.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of courage. And I think that, again, fear plays a big role
Yeah.
into why people may not, focus on their own emotional healing. Like, oh, I'm afraid of what people are going to say, da 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 da. But,
Mm.
I think that's where what we had first started talking about, just that self-worth, I am worth being courageous. I am worth having
Yes.
my time for myself. I am worth all of these things that we desire, but we're afraid to set boundaries around. Actually, no, you are worthy of those things. You deserve to be able to be yourself, have the things that you want. And just to get back to that. And so absolutely being self-aware, like you said, what is it that you want? Who are you? What is it that you want to do? What are your goals, your desires, and what's stopping you from getting there? And a lot of times it is just these other things that we've have accepted for ourselves that we might not necessarily want, but because someone else said, "Oh, well, I think that, you would make an excellent blah, whatever." And we're just like, okay, I'm gonna go with that. And it's actually not what we want, but because someone said that, and it does go back to our younger years, well, I think you would be a great. Actually, I didn't experience that. I've never really had anybody tell me to be something. I've always been the type of person like, I'm gonna do what I want to do regardless. And so there's been a lot of disappointment from others in my life, and that's okay. But I've seen it in other people's lives where it's, oh, I want you to be a computer engineer, and they're pursuing it, and it's taken them 10 years to get a bachelor's degree in computer engineering because actually that's not what the heck they want to do. And it's like,
Yeah, the heart
you
is not
know,
in it.
right, having that courage to set that boundary to be able to experience that emotional healing is key, And I would like to talk about, because I think the underlining thing here is stress, right? Identifying what is stressing me out. And sometimes it's our emotions are stressing us out because of the things that we are experiencing. And I would like to talk about that, just dealing with acute emotional distress versus like long-term emotional challenges.
Mm. Yeah, so for the acute kind of like moments where literally when
Hmm.
you are experiencing all of that stress, a great strategy that you already mentioned is to get away, take a
Hmm.
walk, get yourself, if possible, out of that scenario just for a little bit so you can breathe, so you
Hmm.
can cry your eyes out if that's needed. Like just find a way to release it and then to recenter. Maybe that is okay, I'm taking a couple of deep breaths, or I'm just being outside for a little bit, just shifting my perspective, doing something different.
Hmm.
Sometimes, again, it can be shaking your body just to like get something out and get some other energies moving again. And then to, when you have taken that step back, to think at it with a clearer, more objective mind again. So we don't just react from a state of like heavy or strong emotions, but rather from an observing perspective of, hey, I just now experienced this and I know this is why, and but this is not how I want to keep on like responding to whatever triggered these emotions. I actually want to act in a different way. So it just gives you this little chance to maybe make a little bit of a better choice for yourself, but also in the situation, maybe with others. And in terms of like long term, it comes down to your daily practices, as I already said.
Hmm.
Definitely daily practices like again, gratitude journaling, exercising, maybe having an energy shower where you just wash away all the
Hmm.
negativity in your life, all of those kind of things. But also for like maybe some deeper healing, and that's something I have done next to coaching, is just to practice forgiveness. So
Hmm.
forgiveness is a long-term strategy in a way that you can't, or at least I feel that way, is if you have been experiencing pain in a degree that is too big to just be like, oh, I forgive you. Like if a friend maybe slaps your hand, you're like, oh no, I don't mind, it's fine. But
Hmm.
if you have been experiencing slapping on your hand, like a slap on your hand, like multiple times over years, maybe the wound is a little bit deeper
Hmm.
than just being like washing it off and yeah, that's fine. So the forgiveness can just help to one, forgive the person who has been doing it. Doesn't mean the act was right. Slapping
Hmm.
someone else's hand is not necessarily right, right? I'm just
Hmm.
using that as a metaphor. But it just means that you're releasing this grudge against the other person. So again, it's a form of release and it takes some time. And maybe you need to do different writing exercise. Writing, I mean, I've written a book as well, so there's a lot of emotional healing in my book too. That was a great kind of like catalyst or way to just work through that, to just forgive and see it from a different perspective. And at the same time, it just sets you free again
Mm-hmm.
to do your own thing because you're not holding onto this past any longer. You're not making it mean something about you any longer. And you give yourself this chance again to just walk free, walk free from all of that pain. And
Mm-hmm.
that also doesn't mean you will be free forever. I'm not saying that because it can creep up again. Maybe there still are
Mm-hmm.
some triggers, but that's when you obviously work on your self-awareness, right? To notice those triggers. Maybe it comes back up again. So sometimes I, for example, have around my birthday, so around September time, that's when my triggers are really heavy. When I get like messages from certain family members, or I'm like doing something that just
Mm.
reminds me of certain moments, I'm like, this does not feel great.
Yeah.
Like, this is not nice. Like, there's still some work to be done, but
Mm.
it's fine. But doing then these daily practices, for example, just helps to relieve it in the moment again as well. So, forgiveness definitely is a long-term strategy, I would say.
Yeah. Wow. That's major because I feel like that's exactly where I'm at in my life. I was talking to my mom last night and she was like, "Will you call this particular person who I haven't talked to in years?" She's like, "They are sick, they're going through some things. They would love to hear from you." And I said, I really just was like listening to her and I said, "You know what? I will call them. I will call them because I'm in a better place now." I said, "Had she had asked me that last year, click, I'm hanging up on you, mom. Don't ever ask me anything like that in your life." No, but I said, "You know what? I will." Not because I felt like I was obligated, but because of that emotional healing and just being able to deal with, that trigger of that person. I said, "You know what? They don't have that power over me anymore. And I'm okay to stand up to them and talk to them and see how they are. That doesn't mean I'm going to be calling them every Sunday or whatever. I don't have to deal with them all the time, but I can call and I can tell them, hey, and it might not even come up, right? The act itself of being able to even speak to them on the phone and just say, hey, I hope you get better. I hope you are gonna be well. I hope you're gonna be okay is I'm okay with that as well. Just doing that to me, that's huge. But I think that healing, a lot of people think, oh, this is gonna go away. No, sometimes healing is just raising the floor. So when we're
Mhm.
triggered, we're not going down into the depths of hell anymore with our emotions. We're just gonna hit the earth's surface. We're not gonna go that low. We might steep low,
Yeah.
it's not going to be as low as it was the first time. And that's how that's how you gauge, okay, how much have I healed from this? For me, I said, okay, in that example of speaking to this person, I said, I felt good. I said, I feel more mature now. And I know more. I know more about myself. I know what I'm okay with. I now have the words to be able to say to that person, should things go left with the conversation, just because that's who they are, and I'm aware of that. I'm able and strong enough to say, hey, I don't want to talk about that right now. And if you want to keep talking about that, I'm going to have to get off the phone with you. Right. And this is a phrase that I have learned through therapy and through coaching. And so those things are important because sometimes we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. We just, that fight or flight definitely can turn on and we can just be stuck like a deer in the headlights. But having those tools and just those different practices to be able to deal with the situation in the moment is key. And so having those words for me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Sometimes I just wouldn't know what to say and
Yeah.
would continue to engage in a situation or conversation that made me feel uncomfortable. Now having words to say, hey, you know what? That topic makes me uncomfortable. I would rather not talk about it. If you continue to talk about it, and it's that last part that really was helpful for me. If you want to continue to talk about it, I'm going to have to remove myself from this conversation and then stick by it if someone continues to talk about what I just said I don't want to talk about. And taking that power, yes, it would make me shake in the moment. Oh, well, I don't care that you see me shaking. I stuck by what I just said and I'm removing myself from the situation. And they might continue to talk or be loud or get irate and have their own emotional reaction to my emotional reaction. And that's fine. Let them. I started letting people have that because I got to take care of myself. I think emotional healing is also part of self-preservation. So many
Mm,
people pass away or don't make it to an older age because of stress. They say stress is a silent killer. And I've seen that people my age, I'm 34, are just out of here because of not dealing with stress. And so I think that, well, it might be extreme and it might be morbid, but it's very real reality that if you don't deal with your stress, if you don't seek emotional healing, the it's the price that you pay is really expensive.
exactly. It really is. And it really comes down to the question of, is this the way you want to live life? Like, do you
Hmm.
want to stay stuck in this grudge? Do you want to stay stuck in like stressful, really heavy negative emotions? Or do you want to experience differently? And if you want to, well, then you gotta do something. You
Hmm.
gotta change something. And obviously, it kind of like starts with all the practices we have been sharing and talking about.
Yeah. Wow. So my final, well, not my final question, but something that I did want to ask is, so we did talk a little bit about meditation, and mindfulness as a emotional healing practice. Can we talk about that more? What does that actually look like, and how does that help?
So meditation, mindfulness, I always describe more as a way of just being a little bit more calm and just going inward rather than focusing on anything external. So it's really about being with you, whatever comes up. And meditation doesn't mean you have to empty your brain and not think one single thought no more. It's really just about sitting in peace with your existence, quite literally,
Hmm.
for a couple minutes, maybe longer if you can, but there's no like protocol that says you have to meditate for an hour every single day. If you don't have
Yeah.
that hour, don't do it. Maybe it's just like 3 minutes here and there. Maybe it's more mindfulness exercise in form of getting in touch with your senses, like your hearing, your sight. It can literally happening with your eyes open, like just be very observative. What is around you? What colors do you see? Maybe there are humans around you. Like people watching can be quite a mindful exercise, right? If you go to a
Mm.
coffee shop, sip your coffee, you can taste the coffee, smell it, watch people. That's quite a mindful exercise. Or
Mm.
mindful eating, obviously. Like just getting in touch with your senses already just helps to teach your brain almost a way of disrupting the thought process. Again, it's not about deleting or getting rid of all the thoughts, but just disrupting it and being a bit more in the moment. And whenever a thought pops up, you can be like, oh, that's a thought. Okay, cool. And
Hmm.
don't do anything with it. Like maybe sometimes you go down the rabbit hole a little bit and you think about, okay, what you gotta do next Wednesday at 12 p.m. and be like, oh, I gotta cook my lunch and then I gotta bring kids to school or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
But then you go like, oh no, let's go back to just being mindful and maybe look out the window for a little bit longer and see the trees. And then
Hmm.
go maybe back to what you have been doing right now. So it's really just welcoming the thoughts in, maybe even the emotions that are coming up, and then just letting them go or letting them be. Sometimes if it's maybe like a heavy emotion that might be coming up, just experience it. Maybe you
Hmm.
have like feelings of sadness right now stuck in the body. If they come up, there's a reason they are coming up. One, because they want to be experienced, and two, because they're telling you something needs to be changed. So get curious
Hmm.
about them, get curious about yourself. So meditation, mindfulness are great ways to increase the self-awareness levels. And as said, that's the first step. It's the first step to everything.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's good. Meditation and mindfulness, you said it. That last part was so key is helpful to make you more self-aware. Self-awareness is key, not only for your own life, but for those who you care about. The healing and the work that we do on ourselves, I have always said this, is also a gift to others,
Mm,
because I mean, it just is. That's just been my experience. And so, I would love to hear your advice then that you would give to someone who might be skeptical, right? Because I don't want to just think that, oh, everybody's gonna think that this is all good and dandy. No, I think that there's some people out there who still are like rolling their eyes, like, really? This is what y'all really do? Yeah, this is what I really do. But do you have any advice for the skeptical person who might be listening to just the different strategies and the effectiveness of emotional healing?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being skeptical. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think skepticism is quite healthy actually, because you're not just taking everything for granted, right? So, being skeptical is quite good in a sense, but I would invite those people to just be also open. Just be like, don't just write it off. Don't just think like,
Mm-hmm.
this is not for me. I don't do this. Like, this is not my kind of like thing to do. Just try it. Like, be as open-minded at least to give maybe different strategies a go. And again, that doesn't mean you have to now meditate, you now have to go for walks, you now have to have a gratitude practice, track your emotions, whatever. But maybe try out different things to find something that works for you. There are so many ways that lead to Rome, as the saying goes. And the best way to do emotional healing in the end is to do it your way. Don't just copy someone else's way and feel like this must be it now, the one thing to do for you as well. Maybe some aspects of it work, but others don't. But don't get hung up on it or feel like, oh, it didn't work. Now I can completely write off. I will never do it again. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
just try a different way. Maybe if journaling is not for you, maybe you want to voice record or you want to do a video.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't work for you, maybe you just want to meditate. If meditating doesn't work for you, maybe you just go for a walk. If you don't want to go for a walk, find something else. Maybe it is literally just mindful eating or just being with yourself, maybe 5 minutes a day where you don't meditate or journal, but you're just with you and you just check in and do like, hey, Josie, how are you feeling today? What's going
Mm-hmm.
on inside you? Just do like a body scan. Like, there's so many different things you can try. So if you're skeptic, that's great, but get curious still about the topic and maybe find a way that works for you. And you can still stay skeptic after if you want. If you tried all of the things, like, you do you. Again, as you said, like, let them.
Mm-hmm.
But just try to be a little bit open and start with like small kind of like different activities that you maybe can implement here and there and see if they maybe open something up for you or just increase your awareness about yourself, because understanding yourself, as you just said as well, is never a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
even though we might be a little bit scared of what we might find, because obviously there are shadows to our personalities
Yeah.
and it can be maybe scary to face those. But at the same time, it's only of advantage to know about them rather than living in ignorance of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a meaningful conversation. Before we close, is there anything else that you would like to share? Is there anything that you have going on that we should know about?
There's nothing time specific, but I'm obviously happy to connect with anyone and everyone. If you want to chat more about emotional healing, hit me up. If you want to chat about coaching, hit me up. But also, if you want to have some kind of like actionable, I can't talk, like advice or like other practices that you could try out. I mean, I can highly recommend my book, which is called "And There She Goes Her Way," and it's full with different like practices and literally takes you through those practices step by step, just to try out new things to get a little bit closer to your best self. So if you want to get into it as a starting point, that might be a great way to get started with. But other than that, you can find me anywhere and everywhere, just with my name, Josi Dumont, um, Instagram, Threads, obviously, as
Mm-hmm.
well as my website. And I have a podcast too, which is called the Josi Dumont Podcast. So yeah, that's
Wonderful.
That's it for today's check in. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, hit that subscribe or follow button, and let's keep growing together. Hey, and if you're tuning in on YouTube, drop your after emoji in the comments and tell me what shifted for you. I'll see you next time on Miss Win Checking In, where creativity is a pathway to wellness.